focusing on readers who are already fluent readers or approaching fluency, how to take them to that next level, and also how things are changing in the state of Indiana, in particular to help the students, which is also very exciting things that are coming along. And so the first thing that I wanted to mention, this is going to be grades 3 through 6. And most of you are asked every night to have your child read a good fit book for 15 to 20 minutes at night. And in the old days, like 3 years ago, a little bit more than that, the educational jargon was anything they read is great. Just have them read. Just have them read anything. And we've actually found that's not really exactly true. Some things way better than nothing. So if you have a really reluctant reader and getting them to read comic books is a triumph, we'll take it and go from there. But we've also found that choosing the right books to help them learn to read is also really important. And so that's a big part, starting in 2nd grade, but especially 3rd grade, is how to pick those books that are helping them learn to read. Kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, a little bit of 3rd grade, the children are learning to read. They are learning how to go left to right, top to bottom, all those things. They're learning sight words, they're learning how to decode, they're putting it all together and making it automatic. That part has to be in place before they're able to really think deeply about the text. 3rd grade is taking that and moving them deeper, and it's a big job. So, 15 minutes a night, you don't think it's much. Your children are reading in 3rd grade. I think all of our 3rd graders are reading over 100 words per minute now, and we are counting. We actually are counting. Most of them are reading 120 or more words per minute. If they are at home with a good fit book where they can read at that pace, they're not reading really hard books and stumbling, but they're reading an easy enough book at that pace, they're reading 547,000 words a year. That is the single most helpful thing to do, is just to set aside that time where they're reading. You don't have to coach them, you don't have to cheer them, you don't have to correct them. Just reading the books is a huge help. Even if they're reading 60 words a minute, which is what a lot of our 1st graders are already doing, they're reading 328,500 words a year. So don't underestimate the power of just 15 minutes a night. The other beautiful thing, when you start establishing that routine, you will be so grateful all the way through high school, because I can attest, you will be establishing this routine, and it is an expectation, and the earlier you start it, the easier your life will be in the teenage years. So that's one gift to you tonight. If you can find that sweet spot time, and everybody's schedule is different, where is it that you can reasonably reliably have this time for homework, 15 minutes in 3rd grade through 6th, plus the math, plus the writing. I think that's typically what 3rd through 6th will have pretty much every night. Am I right, Ms. Scott? Yeah. Pretty much. Well, those 3 things, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. Usually it's right after dinner. You're doing the dishes, you're cleaning up, before television. Don't even put the temptation right. They are going to do this for this amount of time. If you can establish that routine, it is there for life. And that's a huge gift to give your children, is that daily routine. Some families can try and do it after school. Usually they're tired, especially coming home, 4 o'clock they're done with school, 5 o'clock they're on the bus, dinner's right around the corner. So typically they just need some downtime then, but every family's different, every child is different. So play around. Is it before dinner? Is it after dinner? It's probably not 10 o'clock. You will all go crazy. So find that time and that routine and establish it so it is just an expectation.
Any benefit to making them read out loud? You said
Oh, yes.
There's a big difference.
Huge, and I'll come to that. Good question. Even though they're, and I'll talk about when to take that away and where it is. But yes, reading out loud, I know when I had my daughter, as soon as she was reading, I never listened to her read again. And I have been astounded now that I'm reading all the way through 6th grade and listening to good readers read, what I'm learning from their reading out loud. It changes, but it is very interesting to come to that. So 15 minutes and then establishing that routine. The other thing is parents that are huge. If you can, and I know as you start getting into sports and all these after-school things, it gets hard. If you can have dinner together, you know, this doesn't seem like it has anything to do with reading. If you can have dinner together and talk, you are modeling all sorts of conversations. And you can be talking about the elections, or you can be talking about, well, you probably shouldn't talk about news. You can be talking about all sorts of things. They're hearing you say, well, I heard at work today that this happened, and we had this big problem. We had to get together 5 people and work on X, Y, and Z. They're hearing all this. They're hearing how you are problem-solving real-world things. That carries into their reading. Because now they're seeing how reasonable adults are problem-solving, thinking about other problems, going, I don't think I would have done that, because, do put the because in there. So as often as you can talk at the table, they're hearing these very rich conversations about issues, about opinions, why you have that opinion, why it was a reliable opinion. And you're not even thinking about it, but they're absorbing this. To encourage them to also talk about their day is enormous. So that time you spend with your families at dinner is, even when they're in the silent teenage years, is really valuable. My son, anybody have 7th and 8th, 9th graders? He had 3 answers. Don't know, fine, and oh, there was another one. Don't know, fine, and nothing. I think those were his 3 answers to every question I asked. I just started calling them A, B, and C. He did outgrow it. But
I had an employee.
Really, after high school when he graduated, and I didn't expect it, I got a rose. And that's when he said thank you, which was really appreciated because it wasn't always easy. It is good. But still, even during the silent years, they are still taking it in. And I remember him saying in a situation, you know, I said, well, why did you decide to do that? For all the reasons you told me. You know, and this was like 6 months later when he finally did it for himself. So they do hear. They might not hear it, but they really do hear, and that's where it's happening. The other great place is your car. They are like a captive audience. And so any conversations while they're captured in that car is great. So keep the radio on and talk, because that's just a huge thing. So I wanted to add that, and I should add this to this slide, but I'll give you something to put on the slide as well. The 3 things that help them read. Having lots of books at home. 3rd through 6th grade, they get to have 5 books from the library now, which is really great. Anything from the Monroe County Library, anything you have at home, keep them at their level where they can grab them. This research says the single most thing that helps them learn to read is that they have books. And it's in the home, and they have access. The second thing is choice, which interestingly enough is more important than a good fit book. And I know we're preaching good fit books, and we should. But if a child is really vested in something, they love football, they know everything about football. They can tell you scores and games and moves and all these things. For them to read a book about football with this huge amount of background knowledge, they'll be able to read a book that's harder than they should be able to read, because they're bringing all this background knowledge in. So you want to have a good fit book. I'll talk about that in a second. But the choice is really important. So how do you do that at home? You don't give them the whole run of the house for a choice. But when they're practicing their 15 minutes a night of reading, there's 2 kinds of reading. There's reading to practice to be a better reader, and there's reading that you're having fun. They're a little bit different. We want them to kind of practice. So we're practicing with a book that they can be reasonably successful with, that they can read for a bit of a time. I love the comic books, but that's also kind of the fun time, unless you're trying to motivate them. But trying to get these books that have some length, some fiction, some nonfiction, both. They think differently. So if they're always reading fiction, you may want to give them a choice one night. We're going to read tonight, do you want to read about snakes or alligators? They still have a choice. They still get vested in the choice, but now they're practicing the nonfiction or the fiction. It tends to be one or the other. They tend to like one much better than the other. So they're getting practice at both of those genres. And so those are really important. Go ahead and go to the next one. I think it's this one. It is. Good fit books. One, they want to read it. And this goes by iPick, and there's some little bookmarks. There's two different kinds on here that kind of go through this iPick. They choose the book. They have some say in what it is. Starting in 3rd grade, this becomes important. Why do I want to read it? So that way they're asking this question, why is it important to me? What do I like reading about? Interest? Do I understand it? Do I know the words? So when I'm looking at a child read, what I'm looking at, and we document this, it's fabulous and it's really fascinating. I'll take their book box and I'll look to see that they have fiction, that they have nonfiction, they have a picture book. Picture books are phenomenal. They're phenomenally rich. They help them to be better writers. So they're reading to the younger brothers and sisters, those picture books, gold. Don't throw them away. That builds this language. They're not writing novels in class. We'll get to writing in February. But those picture books, they're short. They're writing shorter things, and these are very powerful models on how to write. So those picture books are still gold. Don't get rid of them until they're in college, because they can be springboards all the way through, and of course, they still love them. So I'll look to see that they have all of those things, and then we'll pull a book. I'm looking to see that they can read it at about 120 words per minute. 98% accuracy. The research shows if it's not that accurate, now they can make some mistakes as long as they're fixing them, and not too many. If it's not that accurate, they're spending too much time thinking about the words. They did a brain study. When a child is focused on the words and they're trying to just figure out what that next word is, one part of the brain fires, the part that's decoding, the part that's analytical. When that becomes automatic, when they no longer have to think about what the vowel sound is, the same way that you know how to put periods in a sentence, you don't think about it. When their writing's that automatic, a whole other part of their brain starts working. And that's the comprehension part. Until the decoding's really freed up, so they're not thinking about the words so much, they can't remember. They can remember some, but not a lot about the story. The switch happens about in 3rd grade. Some in 2nd, some in 4th, some in 6th. But about in 3rd grade, we're starting to see them being so automatic, they can start telling me about a story. So I'm reading with them. They're reading fast, 120 words a minute. I'm counting. 98%, and then I'll say, what's the story about, and tell me everything you can remember. If they say apples, and that's it, it's not very deep. They need to say, this is a story about a girl who loves to pick apples. Main idea. In the beginning of this story, she goes out and it's really windy, and there's lots of apples on the tree, and they're all falling around her. In the middle of the story, she gets a basket, and it goes on like that. At the end of the story, they have this big basket of apples, and they go and make applesauce. but trying to get in each part, the beginning, middle, and the end, a robust number of details, that they can tell 5 things from the beginning, from the middle, from the end, in order. If that's the next step. Once they have that, then we can start, and we do it already, we talk about inferring and things all the way in first and second and kindergarten. But until they can really retell well, they have a hard time holding on to enough of the story to really get deep. And then they start confusing what they read with what they already knew and what they got in another book. And we want them to bring all that together, but we also want them to remember where their information came from, which is very good when they're trying to figure out if it's reliable when they're looking up. So, this is how to look at a good fit book. I talked about this already. Fluency is the bridge between word work, that's the decoding and the speed, and the decoding part, and comprehension. So we want them at 120, 140 words per minute. After that, it's all good. Then sometimes we're slowing them down because they're reading too fast and they're missing bits. So there's a sweet spot where they're reading a good number of words per minute with expression. Because we don't want them to just read fast. We don't want them to read so fast they don't read it, and then not be able to tell us what it is. So reading fast isn't really the goal. It's one thing. It's reading at a good pace, not too fast, not too slow, just right, with expression. Because if they're expressive, that means they're understanding the story as they read. And so that's why we hit with the poetry that part really hard. I'm going to go through this really fast because by 3rd grade this isn't an issue. But if they're having a problem with accuracy, we are probably having conversations. You're not going to interrupt them. You praise them very specifically at what they're doing well. You let them read the whole time, whatever that 15 minutes is or 10 minutes. You pick one thing to fix. Because if you fix everything, first of all, their heads are going to go down and they're going to hate doing it. And second of all, you're doing all the work. If you tell them every place they made a mistake, you're doing half their work. They need to know when they made a mistake. So if you go through a few pages, you'll say, you know, you did that really well. I loved the way you said the word ancestor. How did you know that word? That was a really hard word. And they'll tell you a reason. You praise them for that. Well, I bet you can get this other tricky word here. You said crocodile. Now look really carefully and they'll go, oh, it's alligator. Specific thing. The next day when they reread, and rereading is gold, when they reread that, you can say, now yesterday we talked about one thing, remember when you said crocodile, alligator instead of crocodile? There's another place in here where I bet you can find a mistake here. Now you have to get to write it down and remember it. And then they've now got a mission. They have a quest. They're going to find the thing. And oftentimes you're looking to see if they can find that other mistake and fix it themselves. Then they're self-monitoring. They're doing the work.
How often do you think they should reread?
It depends. What I often do for 3 through 6 is I'll just have them reread the last page if it's a chapter book, and then we go on. So that part, they've already seen it once. Great question. They've seen it once, they've worked on the words, they know what it's about. They should be reading that smoothly with beautiful expression, and then fixing maybe one or thing that they weren't accurate about, if that's an issue for them. And some of them are at 100% accuracy, but they'll fix one thing there. Really good question. You don't want them to read the whole chapter because that'd be the whole night. So just one page, and then move on. And that's
And this is reading something out loud?
out loud, yeah, out loud. Especially when accuracy is still an issue, because they still need help with that. So a little bit of time reading out loud, and I'll come to the silent later because that was interesting. The second thing is the flow. Oh, I wanted you to look at this. Is it hard to read? Children don't really read. It's not efficient to learn to read by sounding out. Yes, it's a strategy. Yes, we encourage phonics. Yes, it's one of the tools in their toolkit. But they tend to use all their cues together. And so we're looking at meaning and syntax and the letters. Teaching them to read the is very inefficient. So we're going to try to just say that strategy when it's the only thing that's going to work. And so, just so you know, we actually don't read every letter when we read. It's our last strategy, but we'll read chunks. Anti-disestablishmentarianism, we're reading each little bit. Fluency, to get them to read faster. This is when you're reading out loud, and if it's slow and you're rereading a page, you might want to model it. They need to hear what it's supposed to sound like. So if they're a slower reader and they're accurate, they understand it, you're just trying to build the speed up. You might say, I'm going to read this paragraph and you read it back to me, like I did. Do it lots of different ways. You can do it where you read it and they read it back, where you read it together, where you read one stanza or one paragraph, they read the next one, go back and forth, you read one page, they read one page, or they read it independently. A lot of you are getting poems now that your teachers are giving you, or excerpts. These are incredibly powerful ways to build up vocabulary, fluency, and word work, and word families, and the kids love them. They are successful. They are getting these complicated things, and they are good at it, and a lot of them are funny, and that helps too. Rereading those often is huge. It's giving them vocab, sentence structure, exposure to materials, so many things. Remember how when your child was 2 and they wanted to read the same book all the time? And the same movie all the time? That's because they're learning something from it. You can trust them. They are enjoying it. When my son was in 2nd grade, we did phonics pages then, the school did, and these were a piece of cake for him. I was like, yeah, you know, he knew the letters and sounds. But whenever he was feeling less secure, bad day at school, who knows, he pulled out the phonics books. He pulled out the thing he was good at, and it made him feel all right again. These feel great. They're successful, they know how to do it, they get praise for it, and it builds them back up. I am a good reader. If they pick a book that's too hard, or something seems like it's not going well, you can pull out that poetry binder and say, yes, you can read. You read these incredible poems, let's pick out 3. And they remember that they really can do this. Reread a lot, have fun, so you can have a talent night where everybody in the house brings a paragraph in, you know, popcorn night after dinner on Friday, I don't know. You can have a lot of fun with this. The old days where we did charades, you know, for the TV. Oh, sorry. We didn't have TV every night, so that was something we would do and the kids would do. Closed caption on TV is more for younger ones, but the research shows just by having the words on the bottom in English, they read them, you can't help it, and their reading gets better. You don't have to do anything. Just put the closed caption on there. They're forced to read it. They're hearing someone say it. They're hearing someone say it expressively. They're hearing someone say it smoothly. They're seeing the consequences of what they said. And they're getting this passive learning with fairly complicated text without even having to worry about it. So that's easy. That's a really easy one. Nonfiction, if they're seeing Animal Planet, and you want to develop vocabulary, or National Geographic, huge, because they're seeing those ginormous, you know, vocab words that of course they can't sound out, but when they hear it, they know it. But now they're seeing it, and they're being exposed, and they don't even know it. Books on tape, our library has book flicks. You can go to our library website, and it has tumble books, all sorts of books on tape where it has the words at the bottom. With tumble books, there's also these interactive games they can play with. It's very rich. And so those are things that the children can do. Again, they're hearing it read by a fluent reader. They can read along. Doing it more than once is great. They hear it again, and then they do it with the reader. And this is all developing this fluency, so it's fast, so it's automatic, and so it's accurate. Talked about reading poems. Powerful. Your teachers are giving them often a poem a day. Upper grades, sometimes it's taking a couple of days, doing some fiction, doing some nonfiction, whatever the reading is. It varies from grade to grade. Developing vocab. They're pulling out words from those poems that they wouldn't necessarily encounter. Word families, spelling patterns, rhyme, the beauty of language, and fluency, and of course, it's all about fun. So these are all things that are helping them become fluent. So we're freeing up that side of the brain so that 3rd through 6th grade, they're really getting those deeper comprehension questions. Truly fluent readers. First thing you have to do is you have to celebrate. If your child is reading at 98% accuracy smoothly, they are launched. This library is available to them. Every library in the world is available to them. Every piece of knowledge from 10,000 years old to the present is now going to be available to them. Yes, we have to get them through the different levels, but if they're doing that, it's a huge success. And that's again about in 3rd, 4th grade where it's really fluent. Them listening to you read gets them to the next step. I see in these classrooms the teachers reading out loud to them. The students are glued. They love to hear adults read. So if they sit there and think it's babyish, it's just a family night. But them, you modeling reading, especially a book, that's a little harder than what they can read, helps them enormously to get to that next step. When my husband and I were dating, he read to me, and that's what he did. So we all love to hear stories. And so this is just normal. And again, finding a little bit of time, even if it's 3 pages a night during that 15 minutes, make it part of your family time, because later on, you'll see your children doing it for their children. So that's really good. Read together, you can play word games. Talking about the movies, this is what I was saying, either while you're watching or during at the dinner table. If you're watching a movie and you can stop it, talk about those characters. And if that's what you would do, or if that's what you would expect someone to do, or what would happen if that character was a boy instead of a girl. What would happen if that character was a grandma instead of a teenager? What would happen if that character was the president instead of a nurse? You can play around with characters a little bit and show how stories change just by who was put in that situation, which can be really entertaining. And so that can be a kind of fun thing. What would have happened in this story if they were in a desert and not southern Indiana? What would have happened if we were in the 1800s and not 2065? So you can play around with the setting and with the characters just a little bit in books and stories and movies, and that's getting them to think about how much character and setting affects what happens in the plot and what's going to happen in their lives. And they're getting this bank of all sorts of people doing things that hopefully will help them make better decisions. When you go to a museum, they can be the one that's reading all the little things. Have them be the one talking about it. I'm here taking care of the little one, or I can't see because my glasses. Can you read this part for me? And they can be the ones doing some of the reading that's getting that upper level thing. So just try and think of creative ways to talk deeper about text and to get into it. Here's the big one. Your children taught me this last year. I'm going to publish this. K through 3, they're learning how to read. 3 through 6, they're reading to learn. But it's not really as straightforward as that. That's a very simplistic way of saying it. What I found last year as I was reading with your children, when they read out loud with me, they would read, they'd read, sometimes a complicated story, because I had the time to take them for maybe 45 minutes. And they could tell me what it was about and everything that was in the story. I don't know if I could have done it. They were amazing. Then I had them read part of it silently. Boy, they read that fast. And I asked them what it was about. Apples? We assumed, I assumed, when they were reading silently, and I don't know why I assumed this, it's a silly thing to assume, that they were able to understand as well as when they read aloud. And it doesn't happen right away. There's this gap somewhere in 3rd grade and in 4th grade where when they read out loud, they can tell you everything that happened, and when they read silently, they can't tell you as much. We want it to flip, well, or at least to stay the same. So when you're reading with your children, especially right there, have them read out loud, talk a little bit about it. If they're reading silently, make them a little accountable for it. Afterwards, you just read 5 pages. Tell me what was in this part of the story. You're looking for a pretty robust retelling. You're looking for what I said before. This is a story about picking apples in a farm, not just apples. In the beginning, 5 or 6 things. In the middle, 5 or 6 things. In the end. You want them to do that silently, and you have to watch. And they have to practice it a little bit. If this is good, it goes here fairly quickly if you're watching, but not always. And so that's the thing I'm really watching now in 3rd through 6th grade, that they're making this transition. The other thing is whether they can listen to someone read and remember. I admit, I am a terrible listener. I am. I'm smart. But I'm a terrible listener. If I am not taking notes, I don't remember. I will miss big parts. I'm not auditive, I'm visual. Your children are all different that way. And so when I was listening to them, when I told a story, and they had to tell me what it was about, some of them could tell me everything, and some of them couldn't tell me much at all. If they're not that good at listening, and it's not because they're not smart, they're just like me. Until they learn to take notes, which is coming down later. If they're not that good at listening, they're missing a lot of classroom instruction. They're missing a lot of what the teacher's saying in a large group because it's just not the way they do it. The teachers are compensating beautifully. They're having them turn and talk. They're having them do assignments. They're having them do activities to keep them engaged. They know how to get past this gap, but they also realize that not all people are auditive or they can remember what they hear. So listening to reading and being able to talk when someone's telling them something is huge. So again, reading stories with your child, reading that book that's one level above, helping them to be a better listener. This is going to help them in their work. This is going to help them in their life. This is going to help them in their relationships. It's going to help all the way across because we have to be better listeners. I wonder how much would people with iPods and things in their ears all the time, we're not listening as much as we did. I worry about this. I don't know if it's true. But being able to really listen and think about what people are saying and interiorize it and bring it back is a huge skill. And so that's worth thinking about and encouraging still to have your child read out loud, to have them read, not every night all 3, but alternate it, have fun with it, and that they're still listening to their reading. They really need all 3 of these and still be able to tell you about the text. And this was a surprise because I assumed by 3rd and 4th grade they could do all 3 of these, and they cannot, not consistently. And every child's different. And that's normal. They're not behind, that's just the way the way they are. We have different strengths, and they play to their strengths. This is where we're going. I'm really excited about this. Students now, when I said we were reading to learn, this is true. But in the old days, especially in high school, we would just give them things to read and we would talk about the content. What we've learned is that we actually still have to teach reading even in high school. Our job as teachers is that when they're in 5th grade and we're doing a nonfiction text, we are teaching them how to look at that level of difficulty and how to figure out what it's about and what it means and what the main ideas are and what can you infer from it, what can you learn, how should it be different. When they're in 6th grade, you're taking a more complicated text. And we have to model, and the teachers are doing this, don't worry, but we actually have to model how to read at increasingly more difficult levels of text. Indiana, and I think 47 states, I can't remember, have adopted what's called the Common Core. This is a set of standards. Kindergartens move to it, 1st grades move to it, 2nd grade's going to move to it next year, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th grade, all are going to move to it the year after. This is a much higher level of standards for our students. I love it. They are making the students not just read, they are making the students respond in writing to where they're reading. Why? Because that's what they have to do at work. We are a computer society. They have to not only be able to read it, they have to respond in writing. The other thing they're doing, thankfully, is they have to cite in the text. If they have an opinion, they have to tell what in the text shows that that's a valid opinion. We spent way too many years saying, what do you think about, something controversial? And they're supposed to say, I think da-da-da-da-da. They don't have any information. They don't have anything they're basing it on. When you have these issues and two reasonably intelligent people of goodwill differ, there are things to talk about and things to learn on both sides before you have an opinion. And so they're trying with these standards to make sure the students are using reliable sources with good information to base their opinions. And this is a good thing. With the internet now, anybody can put anything on the internet. Mrs. McLean was telling me there was a snapshot, what was it, an octopus hanging in a tree? And it was completely fictitious. Well, you look at that and you go, oh, that's the, I forget the name of it, do you remember?
It's like the rainforest octopus.
The rainforest
Yes.
octopus.
You could research and write a report on.
That was the assignment?
No, well, it was showing, you don't believe everything that pops up on the internet. The assumption is that if it's there on the internet, it's truth and it's well researched and anything's out there.
And it probably looked really good.
It did look very real.
The octopus did. So they have to be much more than when we came through, which the library had already screened our things for reliability. They have to be much more critical. And so the Common Core, high emphasis on reading nonfiction, high emphasis on reading responses, high emphasis on supporting one's statements with facts, texts, medias, peoples, and experiences, and where your information came from, and is it reliable. So we are all rising to this. The tests are going to be much harder because we want our children to be good at this. And so this is exciting, this is good, and we're all rising to this occasion, and that's what all the work here has been about over the past couple of years. Because this was a fascinating thing we got. Right now, the level of skill for an entry-level working place job is about mid-college level. People in the workplace, working construction, not so long ago, you could just have a moderate amount of education. You could get a fine job in construction. That is going away. They have to be able to read. Think about it. I mean, we don't think about it. These are complicated things. And quite frankly, if they don't get it right, your house falls down. This is not low stakes. These men and women have to be reading accurately at a very high level the day they start work. And this is a big change. And so we have to, as educators and parents, really get them to reading at a high school and early college level, no matter what job they're in. I know of 3 jobs in Bloomington open right now. They have been open for 9 months. And nobody can fill the job because they don't have the skills required for it. And a lot of this is reading skills. I knew of 10 jobs someone told me about just recently in Crawfordsville. They've been open for 6 months, waiting, needing people. But the people who are applying can't do the work. That's required there. We as educators and as families are going to raise that bar so that that goes away. This is our commitment, and we are doing it. I'm really happy about that. So all of this is changing. Wanted to say, I think before I came to this, too, well, I might be coming to that. On our library, we have all the books I told you about, Tumble Books and Book Flicks. Mrs. DeLiso also has on the top left a place where you can type in your child's lexile, you get that from the NWEA or from the teacher, and books they like, or subjects they like. It will give you a book list from our library of books at their level on a subject they like. She can pull those books, or you can give them the list. They're here. They might be checked out, but they'll be here soon. And so you have this source of books that are at a good level for them that they are interested in. And that the teachers are using this sometimes to match the students up with their level and what they're interested in to get both of those things together. She has so many amazing things. We had a person move here last year from California. She chose to volunteer at our school because of Mrs. DeLiso's website that she saw in California. It is spreading. And so librarians across the nation are tapping into this website because she has so many things on there and so many good links. So enjoy that. All my old literacy, letters from your literacy coach are on there. I'm going to rename them because I put it by date when I first started. And I'm going to put what the subject is, which will be a little bit more convenient. So I'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks. 3rd grade, I read. Do we have 3rd grade parents in here tonight? All right. Oh, 3rd grade. So 3rd grade, we have the high stakes test where they have to pass this Indiana reading test. There's 2 kinds of tests that we do at our school that everybody does. One's called NWEA, which we just did. And NWEA is a smart test. That's what they call it. In that, children answers a question. If they give it right, they give them a little bit of a harder question. If they get that right, it gives them a little bit of a harder one. If they don't get it right, then it gives them an easier one. And it plays around, isn't that amazing? It plays around with how hard the question is so we can exactly know where your child is on different things. We get the results back really quickly. We use them in our classrooms to help know exactly what your child is, what they're good at, and what to teach. Very powerful for us as teachers. So that's one kind of test that we do here that's very helpful. The other kind is a kind of base test. Do they know what we consider the minimum amount to be successful in 3rd grade so that by the time they're in high school, they'll be successful? So this is just a straight, do you know it or do you don't? It's not a smart test. It's not changing the answers. It's just, do you know it or do you not? Students who do not pass this test will go to summer school that summer, and they'll have another chance. It's called Summer Reading Camp. The kids loved it. They wanted all their friends to come. They had a blast, and everybody at the school passed the IB last year. And we are determined, because we want our children successful. So those students who are struggling a little bit in 3rd grade, they are receiving one-on-one help, 30 minutes a day, with 3 of our preventionists that are working with me. I am watching all of this. Their teachers are also working very hard. With the 4th through 6th graders, they are coming into the classrooms and reading with students who are still behind grade level, even though they're off the 3rd grade watch list. We're still pushing in because we want them to continue to grow. So we're supporting our students so that this 3rd grade test, so that they are all where they need to be. We want them. We want them to be there. And so we're going to get them there. To know where that bar is a good thing. And we will work to get them at that place all together. If you want to see what's on the I Read test, you can go to, and this is just on the handout, go to MCCSC and you go through these. When you get here, it'll take you to the Indiana Department of Education home site. Then you get to go through all these steps because it's a very complicated website and it changes every year. You're going to eventually get to the I Read 3 item sampler. And that will give you some sample questions so you can look at, so you just kind of know the things that they ask. And you can go, oh yeah, they're good, we'll be fine. Or, uh-oh, and I'm going to talk with the teacher. So that way you have that going on. So you can see what it's like, and part of it is test-taking skills, but we're also there watching to make sure they're on the right number, answering questions and things like that. What we're doing here, providing powerful classroom instruction by highly trained professional educators. I have been in, well, between my husband and I, 4 corporations and 5 different schools, 6 different schools. The teachers here are phenomenal, and the reputation is stellar here. They work hard, they are very diligent, they grasp professional development and new ideas, and they know your kids. They really do. They are sincerely here for them, and it is a privilege to be here working with them. They teach me things every single day. We're supporting educators in their quest through focused professional development and support within the school and corporation. Got a huge grant from Smithville Telephone Company, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. They have paid for the best professional educators in the country to come to Bloomington to speak to our teachers. They have paid for the teachers to go to the most seminal professional developments offered in the country. It's been amazing, and it's been powerful, and it's been effective, and we're all seeing this huge change in the culture and in what the students are doing, and it's a really beautiful thing. We have Literacy Coach Me and 3 preventionists now who are working in small groups with your children and one-on-one. I'm watching, we're talking every day, what does this student need? What did they do today? What are we going to do with them tomorrow? And it's not, what are we doing with this class? What are we doing with this child? And it's very exciting. 30 minutes, this is charge time of small group instruction. On the report cards, not only are you going to have the language arts, essential learnings this time, we're going to have math too, so the report cards were long. But there's 12, 14 language arts things in each grade that we want to make sure your children know. They need to know it to get to the next grade. They need to know it for life. It's not little things, we'll do those too, but these are the things they must know. And we want to make sure they have it cold. There's no questions. Same for math. And the teachers are really pinpointing, it's hard because they're having to be very exact. It's not just a reading grade anymore. It's can they do these things? And they're watching and documenting. So this targeted instruction, because we know that kind of detail, we know these students need support. These ones have it. We're taking them to the next level. We don't want boredom. We don't want to teach one thing to 30 students knowing it's only for 6. That's no good. So we're dividing them up by what they've shown us they know and what they need, so they're getting exactly what they need, whether it be college level or 1st grade level. We're going to provide that during that 30-minute time. Really targeted instruction. This collaboration, this is our late start on Wednesday. I know that can be really hard for families coming in, but it is so powerful. We get together, and it's not just your teachers. I'm there. The preventionists can sometimes come in. the special needs teacher comes in, the English language arts teacher comes in, both of our principals come in. We work as this huge team. We talk about the children, we talk about each child. Where should they be? What do they know? And without that late start, that hour, we couldn't do it. We can't, because there's not enough time. People have things after school. It provides that time to make sure we really talk about your child. And it is the single most thing that's really helped everybody be very exact in helping their children. Intervention teams that coordinate student learning. So those people, children who are at risk, doing very detailed, what exactly can they do? Where exactly are they getting hung up? Making sure everybody who teaches that child has this information. And that we're all doing the same thing. And coordinating that, making it very powerful. Careful monitoring through all these assessments, whether it be listening to them read, whether it be listening to them speak and give a presentation, whether they're just talking in a literacy circle and what they're talking about. Doesn't have to be paper and pencil, but all the different ways we're thinking about how your child's doing. And then all these, the Summer Institute, which is students who didn't pass the IREAD test, they get to do this really amazing summer program that has really helped that. So lots of things, lots more things too, of course, but those are the biggest ones. And on February 19th, going to do a writing seminar as a counterpart to the reading, and it'll be K through 6. I didn't give it last year, so I'll see how that goes and see if I should divide it up. So we'll talk about the latest research in writing and how that helps your children go through. Quick questions, and then I'll divide up between different teachers so we can talk about these. Any questions for me first?
I have a question, trying to get to your research sources.
Yes?
Could you, Read Aloud Handbook has been my guide,
Mm-hmm.
and it really focuses on fiction reading
Yes.
as a high comprehension and sort of read what interests you.
Yes.
And so I'm interested in the points that you sort of made counter to that one.
It's not counter, it's in addition to.
Okay.
And so, yes, they need these very rich fiction things, but not to the exclusion of the nonfiction. And as teachers, well, I will speak to myself, I like fiction. So I had a tendency to read more fiction to my students. And I have a lot of students who really like nonfiction. And that was to their detriment. The way your brain works and processes is different from fiction and nonfiction, so they need practice at both. And so the Common Core is shifting it at least even, if not a little heavy on the nonfiction. Because once they get the idea of how stories work, it has characters, it has plot, it goes from beginning to end, you get all those really rich inference questions about how the characters are, how the setting affects it. These are all really huge, big question ideas. And it's getting the students to look at big pictures and synthesis. When you're doing nonfiction, you're often doing the other part. It's more analytical. So a different part of the brain's working, and they need to be able as adults to do both. In the workplace, they're probably not reading fiction. They're reading nonfiction. And so it's a little bit of a drive. The Common Core came also from employers saying, what don't we have in the workplace? What don't they know? What do we need to give our children so that they can walk into this workplace with a plethora of jobs they can have? And so it was in response to that. And I will
That's
get a
fine.
site.
That's fine. I'd like
I
to
want
read
to
more
say
about
some,
it.
yes, and I will get that. I'm going to write that down. Give me
Okay.
your name,
Okay.
and I will get thank you. I will get those resources. I can tell you who I think it is, but you know how that is. So I'd rather be
Okay.
certain. And I will
Super,
get
thank
that to you. Thank you. Other questions?
Oh, you mentioned I read test.
Yes,
What grade is the test for?
the test is for 3rd grade,
Just third?
just 3rd grade. We gave a practice test last year in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, just to see how that was like, but we just looked at it ourselves. It doesn't go to the state, and it's not high stakes where you keep them behind. Just good practice, but it is third grade, and it's the whole state. So it's not our school, this is every school in the state. It's a good
Thank you.
question, thank you. But let's go ahead and break up into groups. Is Ms. Wiggins here?
Yep, I'm right here.
Where are you? Oh, there you are.
Sitting,
If
listening.
you were in third grade, let's say third and fourth grade,
Oh.
you can speak up. You've taught it.
Yeah, I have
You're
a wondering.
talented, you are so
Okay.
experienced.
That's getting deep.
You know so many things. Maybe come over here in third
Sure.
and fourth grade, and if you're in fifth and sixth grade, maybe move to this table, the blue table there. And Ms. Scott and Ms. Gross can help answer questions there. So third and fourth, and fifth and sixth, and then I'll be around to help.